When we think of streamer fishing, most often we think of the idea of fishing across and down and casting and retrieving. But on this section I'm going to show you how to fish streamers dead drift, almost akin to upstream nymph fishing. You can see here's the typical way of streamer fishing across and down, casting and retrieving. In certain conditions, such as low flow or rivers that have been hard fished, the across and down method with streamers can fail, so the dead drift method can be a good alternative. What we're going to do with this method is we're going to fish these streamers upstream. The real positive here is the trout are often undisturbed as all the noise in the water goes downstream. Often unbeknown to anglers, dead bait fish will drift down the river that are sought after by the trout. As you can see here's a young trout that for some reasons died and it's drifting down. This happens with baby salmon, smelt and a whole host of bait fish. Here's a typical set of the flies we're going to use. First of all, we have the tungsten bead that sinks the fly down. Then we have the indicator, important that you tie this or you buy these so that you can see them really well. And then we have the dead drift bait fish. You'll notice it has a latex body and rabbit fur, which animates in the water. I think this is very important. This diagram shows a typical rig to use when fishing dead drift streamers. It's important to play and tweak with this to suit your casting methods and the water you're fishing. Okay, I'm just going to start here and show you the rig. I'm holding the tungsten bead, then now I'm holding the streamer, the dead drift streamer. What I like to do before I use these streamers is just wet them down a little bit. That helps them sink. As like so, and we're ready to go. As I always say, fish your feet first, so don't walk out into the water. You'll see I've selected a nice piece of water here to fish. So just pull off your line. We're going to do some nice casts out to the edge of the flow and just watch that indicator come back. It's important to keep up with your slack line and retrieve your slack line. And if you see any movement on the indicator, strike. When the fly comes parallel to me, I quite like to move the fly just with a few twitches to attract fish. Here I've moved up the run, and just here's a great place to fish this method. So you're quietly fishing away, just trying various casts into different places, watching the indicator very keenly. Oh, strike there. It wasn't a fish, but the point is you must strike anyway because you're never going to be able to differentiate when the indicator dips as to whether it's hit the bottom or it's a fish. So be very keen on the strike. Once I've fished my way up the run, I often like to fish my way down a little bit too. So what I do here is cast out at a right angle, 90-degree angle, straight out into the river, let the fly sink down, let it dead drift for a while and then give it the odd kick now and again, just by lifting the rod high. You'll see what I'm doing here. This sometimes will beckon a fish to take. When you do these slight retrieves with the rod tip, at times trout will come and inspect the streamer and maybe not take. That gives you a good clue that there's a fish there, so sometimes it's a good idea to change the pattern, change the streamer, or even come back and upstream nymph the fish. Like a lot of fishing, reading the water becomes important. Here's a really good braid on the Rakaia River, and my friend Wayne is fishing away dead drift here. It's an optimal looking run, so Wayne's taking it nice and carefully, keeping his eye on the indicator at all times. Watch what happens on this cast. And note how Wayne is taking a stealthy approach. That's the real positive of this upstream fishing method with streamers. You don't disturb the water. This place gets fished a lot, but these fish are unaware that we're here, giving you more chance of a hookup. Oh yes. And here, a beautiful brown as the result on the dead drift streamer. Dead drift streamers can work particularly well on rainbows and browns. In all manner of waters, low country, back country, you name it, this method will work. These scenes show me hooked up to a very nice rainbow on the Waimakariri River near Christchurch in South Island, New Zealand. And as you can see from here, you can see the animation in the streamer. Notice how the tail is moving around a lot, so too is the rabbit. I also think the eye is a very important attractor on this pattern. Here's Wayne hooked up again, and you can see the type of water we're getting the fish in, these slower pieces of water where the current lets up a little bit. Focus on these places. Another important aspect to communicate to you is that it doesn't have to be fast flowing rivers for this method to work. Here I'm fishing a very slow flowing river with an indicator and a smelt imitation, so you can use it on slow flow and still water for that matter. Here I'm going to apply the dead drift method to some whitebait patterns. And here's the fly box of flies I'm using today. Notice I have various weights of tungsten beads. This is very important. Here's the dead drift whitebait imitation and the indicator, also in different colours. Here Wayne's fishing upstream, just fishing some clear water coming into a discoloured braided river. With the indicator, you can see the indicator drifting down in sight. Here's a good example of the dead drift method working very well. This is a very public place and gets fished a lot. We're here early in the morning and you'll see Wayne walk out and get a hook up on his first cast. Here you can see a school of baby salmon. And here you can see this trout violently chasing this school. Sometimes during this event, the baby salmon will get knocked out and drift down the current. And these are keenly sought after by the big brown trout. Here I'm going to show you the Troutlands Dead Drifter. The great thing about this streamer is it looks a lot like a lot of bait fish. It's impressionistic. We're going to start off with a strong wire, wide gape hook and pre-barrow monocord. Just a light coloration on the monocord. We're going to put a few foundational turns onto the hook, just in a wide open spiral, trim off the excess. Now we're going to go forward. Now I'm going to get the lead core line, and I leave the core on for this particular fly, and we'll start just in behind the eye, sitting on top of the hook, and we're going to wind it back just to about there. You can see the proportions. Now I'm going to put a small smear of super glue on just to secure the whole fly. Acts as a good foundation. Now we're going to wind this lead core line forward, like so, nice and tightly. We're going to go right up to behind the eye on this particular fly. Now we're going to fold this little tag end over on top, and this forms this sort of head that we can put the 3D eye on later. Just like so. A few turns wide open just to support the fly even more. Now I'm going to get the latex tail. I've shown there's going to be options for this tail, and we're just going to tie that in on the side so that it stays vertically orientated. You can see like this. A few good turns to secure. Now I'm going to get the cross-cut rabbit, and we're just going to tie a little bit of a tag end of that and wind the cord forward, leaving a good gap behind the eye. Now we're just going to go forward with the cross-cut rabbit like so. There's a little bit of method in here, just practice a few times and you'll get it. Now we're going to tie over, trim off. You can see you don't need much cross-cut, only 2 or 3 turns works fine. And just secure that in, tidy it up a little bit. You can see here, it has a lot of action in the water. Now I'm just going to put a few turns here, just to sort of form that head area where we're going to put the eyes later. Now just on the top I'm going to put just a little bit of olive rabbit for this particular pattern. You can choose lots of different colorations for this pattern. It's important that you can adapt to whatever you see fit. You don't have to use my form, my colorations here. So please, experiment all you want. I'm using olive. It's worked well for me. In the next stage I'm just going to get a few strands of olive dyed pearl flashabou. Again, not too many, 3 or 4 strands. And we're going to just size them up. Again, tying them in on top of the hook, like so. A little bit of an art here as always, just in behind the eye, that's it. And now what we're going to go is go back to where we were. Now fold over and tie them in, trim them off to length. Now a few good turns, tidy up any loose ends, like so, and we'll knock the fly off with a whip finish or whatever you choose, trim off. And that's phase 1 of this fly. Now what we're going to do again is just put a smear of super glue on either side of the head of the fly, like so. And this acts as a good foundation that we're going to put the eyes on. And you can see the proportions here, the general proportions, the size of the tail. And there it is looking down. You can see how much this is going to move in the water and have a lot of action. Now the next phase is to get some 3D eyes. I'm using silver on this particular pattern, but you can, again, there's lots of options on these eyes. And you're going to put one eye on either side of the fly, just while that super glue is still wet. And here we go, we'll put the eye on the other side and just let that sit to dry for some time. Once the eyes have dried, we're going to get some UV resin, a lot of different brands. I particularly like the Loon, and just put a little bit on the top of the fly and let this sort of drift down to go underneath the eyes as well, like so. You can see that there, and we'll put a little bit on the underside. And now what we'll do is get the UV torch, shine it in on that side, and that sets this resin. And then we'll do it on the other side as well, and that's the fly fundamentally finished. Sometimes I like to leave them out in the sun for a while. That particularly sets the UV resin and makes it go hard. And that's the Troutlands Dead Drifter. For the body, there are quite a lot of options. You can use latex, frantic tails, or nymph skin. Here I'm going to cut to shape out of thick latex. You'll see it here. This has a really good baitfish smelt look and a lot of action and waving motion in the water. You'll see it here. Here's some underwater footage that shows the action this fly has. You'll see the eye looks really quite attractive. You'll see that little bit of flashaboo at the top, and importantly you'll see that tail acting as well as the rabbit moving in the water. So it's got all the ingredients we want. Even when it flutters down, it'll have some action, looking a lot like a natural dead baitfish drifting down. So I hope you try this method at some time, and please remember you can change things around, use sizes and colours to suit yourself. I'm only trying to show you the principles here that you can adapt upon.